no, but like, yes, but no, but like, kinda, but like, no. Oh girl, there's like a tire slasher on the loose, people are going missing, and you sitting here bumping uglies with a skeleton you just met. Ooh, it's not looking good. Deltarune chapters 3 and 4 have taken over my brain, my life. I go to sleep and I think about Chris and their traumas. I wake up and I think of Susie being the real main character. And yes, I'm thinking of replaying all of the chapters because I did not get any of the eggs or the secret boss fights, or most importantly, Star Walker. I am not well, and since one video is not enough, I wanted to make another specifically talking about my and yours reactions to the newest chapters, as well as any questions or theories that we may have going into the next year. Guys, we only gotta wait a year this time. It's crazy. And of course, I'm starting with Toriel. Please come to the front, girl. We got a lot to talk about, so let's jump into it. If at any time you like this video, please give it a like and subscribe because I make videos like this all the time. And of course, I made a form. You know, I like a good form. That's kind of my thing at this point. I make forms. I'm the form girl, okay? I seriously, again, got over 50 responses. Y'all love Deltarune. I love Deltarune. We're on the same wavelength here. Of course, that means I'm not going to be able to get to all of the responses today, but if you join the Patreon, you will get first access to the forum, and which ensures that your response will make it into the video. I'll have a whole little Patreon section for those answers. Otherwise, I just kind of choose at random. In fact, I don't even choose at random. Google Form chooses at random. It's actually a lot harder. You can put them in order, but it's a lot harder to do, and I feel like it's more fair if I just put it in like a random order. So the rest of them are just in random order, but if you want to ensure that yours is chose, hey, join the Patreon. You get a bunch of extra stuff too, like it's on the screen right now. Yeah. But just in case you don't get chosen, go ahead and leave it in the comment as well. Any theory, question, whatever. It doesn't have to have a ton of evidence. Most of what I'm going to say doesn't have a ton of evidence other than I think it's going to be fun. So don't even worry about that. So go ahead and comment that down below. And hey, let's just jump into it. How do you feel about chapters 3 and 4, and what were your favorite parts? I love Susie's whole development throughout the chapters. She is the one who actually gets through to Tenna and Rouse when both are having their respective moments of feeling worthless. And I love her relationship with Gerson, of course. Special mention goes to her smack talking the knight and standing up to Carol. Got to love an underdog calling out her future mother and sisters-in-laws. I was already thinking that Deltarune might turn out even better than Undertale, and these chapters are really cementing that, especially with the character writing. Hopefully Toby can keep the ball rolling for the rest of it. My favorite part of chapter 3 was Tenna's redemption, which was brutally interrupted with the sudden appearance of the knight. And my favorite part of chapter 4 was Susie chasing after the prophecies until she saw the unknown one and shouted it. Absolutely chilling scene. And I agree with these sentiments 100%, and we will get to them. Do not worry. We will get to Susie, my girl, and we will get to Tenna as well, because I did skip over Tenna in the last video. I'm sorry. But we will talk about Tenna and Spamton in this video. Do not worry. But first we need to talk about Toriel. Toriel, come to the front. Come on, girl. We got a lot to talk about. Now, I have seen many a tweet going on about Toriel and whether or not she is a bad mom. And honestly, I could probably make an entire video. This video is going to be long, but this probably could have been its entire own video talking specifically about Toriel. I understand why like people who just have Deltarune related channels make like separate videos on each character, because this is a 24-page script. Anyway, but let's talk about Toriel, because I feel like a lot of people are overly mean to her, but also some people are giving a little bit too much flack to them. And what has turned into what is basically, let's talk about our childhood traumas online. As it relates to parenting. So I thought I'd add a little bit of a sprinkle of nuance to the conversation. Toriel in Undertale was this infallible character, right? Like she was this protective, stereotypical mom character who has gone through so much grief and so much loss. And you know, because of that, we want to make her proud. We want to be the only human that doesn't die, that can return to her and essentially be her surrogate child. And in that way, I think we all saw Toriel as this character that really can do no wrong. Like her flaws in Undertale, aside from a couple of like maybe like really deep knowledge things about Undertale, on the surface level, her flaws was that she was maybe a little too overprotective, but that was largely it if you didn't look too much deeper into Undertale. Like she simply just didn't want to see another human die, and can you fault her for that? Now, Deltarune, especially for the characters of Undertale, really does seem like an alternate universe. The characters are the same intrinsically, but we now live in this world where what if there was no subjugation? There was no underground, at least yet. I know a lot of people think that Deltarune is a somehow parallel prequel to Undertale. I'm not even gonna get into all of that, but in this world so far, there's no subjugation. There is no like racism against monsters or anything like that and banishing them to the shadow realm. None of that exists. So where do these characters fit? What are their lives like? What are their personalities like when they finally get to just live technically normal lives? And what flaws can we expect from someone who just lives a normal suburban middle class life? And I actually really love this because we get to see so many facets of this character. Toriel doesn't get to just be this stereotypical mom character now. Now she has flaws. She's a full three-dimensional character. And I think half of the shock, I think, from Toriel kind of being a little bit neglectful to Chris, which we will talk about, is the fact that it's bad, right? That is a negative trait that this person has right now. It's not a trait that they might have forever, like I will talk about. I think Toriel is just going to go through like character development, but it's a negative trait nonetheless. And when you have this infallible character and you give them like a super negative trait, it's a shock to the system. It is. And I think that's the point. Like, I think Toby Fox made it so that the whole gag of her drinking while hanging out with Sans is something that is played off as a joke at first, and then it slowly starts to get a little bit more unsettling. It's like, oh, ha ha ha, she's dancing with Sans. We know that she has a relationship with Sans in Undertale. This Sans is possibly said Sans from Undertale, so it's like all of those things together is just kind of like, oh, that's a really funny gag. Also, there has just been many jokes about Sans fucking your mom this entire time. So, like, it's... I said that with a completely straight face. Anyway, it's played off as a gag at first. And then Toriel like falls down. She's slurring her words. Chris's and Susie's interactions or reactions rather to this really makes it feel like obviously Susie is unfortunately probably used to this type of like stuff from a parental figure. She seems very, very uncomfortable by the fact that Toriel of all people is acting like this. Like, I almost feel like we're Susie in the moment because Susie also sees Toriel as this like infallible person, right? Someone who like is so motherly and takes care of them. When they were bullying Chris, when Susie was bullying Chris like way back in like the first chapter, one of the first things that she says is that your mom hates you and is going to like eventually disown you because you're such a bad kid. And obviously Susie was just projecting, especially given the fact that she really looked up to Toriel and really cares for Toriel. And so for all of that to come crashing down essentially in this, like Susie's fucking going through it. She is going through it. Anyway, we're not talking about Susie yet, but like we're Susie in that moment, seeing this infallible character be like this. And the way Chris reacted is kind of like yes, we know Chris doesn't really react to things, but there was the fact that there was a reaction here of kind of like, oh, like don't look at me right now, like to Susie. It really does feel like this is something that has happened before, unfortunately, which of course leads to credence to, is Toriel a bad mom? So I interpreted this entire scene to be that Toriel is somebody who like, you know, gets a little wine drunk every now and then, okay, but I don't think that like she is a complete alcoholic just yet. I mean, we'll I think we would need more evidence for that. Like, I think we would need like more than just one time of her getting drunk. I know a lot of people talked about in the comments, again, bringing up their own childhood traumas of like whether or not like Toriel drinking in the first place is like good or bad or this, that, the third, yada, yada, yada. I'll say this, my parents, like, you know, drunk in front of me. They never got drunk, but they did drink in front of me. They continue to drink in front of me. Like, that's something they do. But I think there is something to say, and people have talked about the trauma that comes from a parent being drunk, even if they're not like abusive in that way. Like, you know, when you usually think of like alcoholic abusive people, even though very obviously Toriel is not like, you know, abusive in that way, being drunk around your child and not like, especially with now the neglect that we know, which I think, side note, let's talk about that first. I think a lot of people see this whole scene in a vacuum and don't attribute it to every other piece of neglect that Chris has been going through. Like, Chris does not have their own clothes, which at first I think we all kind of like associated with, oh, well, Chris has an older brother, you know, you always get your older brother's hand-me-downs. Okay, Chris doesn't have anything in their room or in the house for that matter that is theirs, that is like their thing about themselves. I really wonder why there isn't a piano in the house, like even like just a keyboard. And if there is, someone like double check and fact check me. I feel like the only way there not being a piano in a house is if there used to be. And then because of, you know, stuff that happened in Chris's past, maybe Chris wanted to get rid of the piano. That I can see as a reason why there's no piano in the house. Otherwise, there shouldn't be, like, you should know your child is like really into piano and has like their own personal like wants and things like that. And none of those seem to be a thing that is available in this house, right? Chris, it just seems kind of like an afterthought in this house. And there are many different reasons why that may be. And I also want to state that this is a two-parent problem, because Asgore is also a parent who is available. Like, just because they're not together, like, this is a 2-parent problem. So I'm not gonna just push all of this on Toriel, okay? And on top of that, this idea I talked about last time of Toriel kind of giving up on Chris and not really paying that much attention to them, just being like, oh, they just do that. Oh yeah, Chris just disappears for like hours at a time. That's kind of just fine and it's okay. I think what we're seeing here with Toriel as a character is a person who, like in Undertale, she was really overprotective. We saw in chapter 1, like, she holds Chris's hand as they walk to the car and then walk to the school. Like, it was kind of like, okay, like, Chris, I was really wondering, like, how old is Chris? And now we know that they're teenagers, and I'm like, why are you holding your child's hand when you go to school? Which is like, that's an overprotective nature, but then juxtapose that with the neglect that Chris is obviously getting at home. It's just kind of like, huh. And you know what that is? Nuance. It's nuance to Toriel's character. Toriel isn't just this overprotective, like infallible mom anymore. Like, she is a full 3-dimensional character. And so I don't think that she's just this evil character who cannot be redeemed. She's a monster. She's causing Chris all this trauma. No, I think that she also has trauma from Chris having trauma. I can imagine if your child has trauma and you don't know how to help your child, you can feel very helpless in that situation, because the next chapter is seemingly about Asgore and the family and things like that. I feel like we're going to get even more. I think that this whole scene is a setup for Toriel and Asgore and their whole relationship and the way that they treat Chris and all this stuff. And I think that it's primed for this character development that Toriel will go through, where she will realize that, like, you know, I've tried my best, but also at the same time, like, I also failed you in some areas. You know what I mean? And so I say all this to say Toriel is not like a horrible, unredeemable character, mother, whatever. But she is making an irresponsible decision in this moment. And that is okay to say. It's okay to say that Toriel is making an irresponsible decision by her child in this moment, while also saying at the same time that it's okay that she wants to, like, hang out with the guy that she just met. I think it's so funny. Oh my god, that sad shit is so fucking funny. All of the art that people have been drawing that's been like, you know, he only has 1 health point, right? Like, I fought him before, just let me do it again. We can do it again. Like, I can kill this guy for you, Chris. Don't even worry about it. I think it's so funny. I know some people have been also hating on Sans for this. I think that's just a matter of the fact that, like, the reason why Toriel and Asgore may have gotten divorced is a lot less sinister than, like, in Undertale, which was, like, Asgore had to kill a bunch of children for the sake of his, like, I was gonna say country, the sake of his, like, world, right? Where in this case, in this world, it seems like, yes, probably whatever happened in the bunker and the reason why Asgore left the force is the reason probably why they got divorced. It seems, at least on the surface, a little bit less sinister. There are, of course, a bunch of ideas on why Asgore had to be let go from the force, this being one of them. Which is the fact that, like, he probably left Des in that bunker while saving everybody else, and people are, like, a little bit upset, and specifically Toriel is, like, a lot of bit upset about the fact that he did that. That's, like, a really big theory that a lot of people have, and that would be a reason why somebody would have to step away from the force, but nobody's, like, super mad at him. Like, it's more of, like, a ceremonial thing of, like, you know, we gotta let you go because of what you did, but, like, no one's, like, super mad at you, right? Except for Toriel, of course. That's just, like, one of the many theories about why they could have gotten divorced. And so that, comparatively, I think because it's a much, like, semi, at least for now, lighthearted reason for the reason why they got divorced, in the way that, like, it's played off as a gag. Like, for now, it's played off as a gag. I feel like it's not going to be played off of a gag much longer. Because it's, I don't know, Asgore seems to be a little bit losing it, in my opinion. But I think it's played off as a gag right now about, like, Asgore trying to get Toriel back and Toriel being, like, mad at him. None of it has rang serious. Like, nobody has put this in a serious moment yet. And so because of that, it's kind of like, oh, well, there's a chance they may still get together. Like, who knows? So Sans coming in, I think a lot of people were like, home wrecker, even though Toriel is single. I think it's funny. I think it's funny, mostly because Sans is the butt of, like, every joke, and so it's fine. I think it's fine because Sans is the butt of every joke. I think the Toriel stuff is a little bit more like, we need to have nuance about characters, especially characters that, you know, were infallible at first and now are not infallible. We need to have more nuance about these characters, right? Sans is so funny because he has so much nuance to him that I think people just, like, make him the butt of every joke because he is the guy that suffers. He is the sufferer. Speaking of, let's talk about Sans real quick. I'm not gonna lie to you, I thought that Sans wasn't going to be super important in Deltarune. Like, I thought we were gonna get pretty much the level of what we got in Undertale, like, in terms of learning about his past. Like, it's always gonna be super vague, and you're just gonna have to put 2 and 2 together, and there's gonna be theories for years and years and years about it. I did not think he would have like this super, and he still might not, like he hasn't been introduced into the main story just yet. He's this character that like, I feel like we know the audience and Sans knows that we know the audience about him. And it's like one of those things where it's like, there's constant gags and like a little bit of jokes about the fact that we know who he is and how he is probably from Undertale and all this stuff. And now, and now after the end of this last chapter, we're all sitting here like, oh no, this might get serious. Like it might get serious because the whole thing about Sans is that he has this entire persona, right? And then when you learn more about him, it gets really serious and really dark and really sad. And you learn all of this by going through the genocide route. Like you can't learn about this if you do the pacifist route, I believe. So actually, you can go into his house on the pacifist route, right? I'm just saying shit off the top of my head. If I'm wrong, correct me in the comments. But like, anyway, the point is with Sans, there's a lot that you learn about him after the fact, right? Like there's the main game and then there's a lot that you learn about him after the fact. However, here in Deltarune, we've learned nothing about him. We're at the halfway point of the game and he has just been like a reoccurring character. And it's really just one of those things that's like paid up for laughs for now. But at the end of chapter 4, guys, I need to tell you a story. So when I was playing this game on stream, right? And I played chapter 4 and my headphones died because they were already about to die anyway. But like they somehow made it through the entire game of chapter 4, except for right at the end, my headphones died. And this was right after I beat the Titan. And so after the Titan, there's that conversation with Rouse. We'll get to all of them. Do not worry. I told you this is a long video. There's an entire conversation with Rouse and then you leave the Dark World. And then after you leave the Dark World, you go out into the street and then like it starts raining again, right? There was no sound for that. There was this glitch. I'm pretty sure it's like a bug in the game. I don't know if they fixed it, where if my headphones die or disconnect, the sound would just stop playing in the game. Like it would just stop playing. And I don't know why. Like no matter how many like headphones I plugged in or like whatever, the sound would just stop playing. And again, it may have been a bug in the game. It may have been for me. I don't know. Either way, I literally was like, I cannot play this game without sound. I cannot do that. Like that is just a thing I cannot do. And something told me, I knew I was at the end of the chapter. I knew I was, but I was like, I have to go back. Like I have to restart the game. However, there's very little save points in Hometown. Very, very little. And that's on purpose. There's very little save points in the light world. There's supposed to be actually 0, apparently, according to Toby Fox. So I was like, surely though, there was an autosave after beating the Titan, right? Surely. There was not. So I had to redo the entire Titan boss fight just to get to the end of the game. And when I tell you, it was worth it. It was worth it. Why? Because this song played. Oh, yeah, you're right. Smells nice. After the rain. We're going straight home. I would stop by Sans, but you know what? We're just gonna go straight home. Uh-huh. Right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So if you don't know, this song that is playing in this moment when you're on the way back to Chris's house from leaving the church is called The Place Where It Rained. And if you don't know, if you weren't there for Undertale, there is a song in Undertale that is called It's Raining Somewhere Else. And this song specifically plays when you are talking to Sans. I think you can only get it during the pacifist route. Correct me on that. During the pacifist route, where he essentially starts talking to you about how he used to talk to this woman through a door and they used to crack jokes and they used to talk about their fears and this and that, yada, yada, yada. They got close to each other through the door, right? And at the end of this conversation that they've been having, this person, who we all assume is Toriel, tells Sans, hey, can you do me a favor and protect any human that comes through this door, essentially, that comes through this place? Can you promise me to protect them? And not so many words. And the song, It's Raining Somewhere Else, is playing, and it's like this really echoey accompaniment, like piano piece, where Sans' theme is playing very slowly in the background. Right. So, The Place Where It Rained being fucking Deltarune, which people have been theorizing about, and getting a song title literally called The Place Where It Rained. When I tell you we were, oh Oh my god. Like, I was going fucking insane. People have been theorizing about this for fucking years. There was a theory that was bopping around for a very long time about Sans, and about the fact that Sans is actually somehow from Deltarune and went to Undertale. How the fuck did he do that? We don't know. He does have this door in his house in Undertale that looks like this. It looks like the type of warp doors that you would see in the Dark Worlds that are fast travel doors. So, like, connection there? I don't fucking know. But, like, now the question then remains, the door that he was talking to, at least I always assumed that if he was talking to Toriel, it was between her house and, like, Snowdin, because when you leave her house at the beginning of Undertale, you go to Snowdin and immediately meet Sans. So, like, that's what we all thought, right? We thought that that was the Toriel was talking about. Now, through a door makes a lot more sense, because this doesn't seem like some type of door that you go through. Obviously, we don't necessarily see it. There's this big giant double door, but it could be, like, just a cave that you, like, climb out of or, like, whatever. The door that he could have been talking about is the door in his house that has the little thingy under it that's, like, clearly a fucking portal to Deltarune. So now everybody's thinking, oh, Sans Undertale. No, bitch. It's Sans Deltarune. I will say I am semi-wrong about this, because Sans does mention that it's a door in the forest during this conversation. However, Sans is known to just straight up fucking lie. It could also be a retcon. It could also just be the fact that it was the door between Snowdin and Toriel's, like, bunker place cave. It still is, like, a little strange that he's talking about all of this and now we know the place where it rained, yada yada yada. It would assume that he's still talking to a Toriel from Deltarune. How, though? Who knows? It could be also, like, the bunker in the forest. Who knows? Y'all leave me y'all thoughts about that down below. And now, the fact that that song played right before you meet Sans again, and again, I know that scene was, like, played up for a gag, but that song plays right before meeting Sans again, and right before a Sans and Toriel moment. Like, Chapter 5 is going to be the messiest piece of divorce court TV that has ever fucking existed. It's gonna be crazy. Oh my god. Hey, this is sponsored by me, of course. By nobody else but me. I made stickers. So I made stickers of all the stuff that I drew in June for Pride Month. So if you wanted any of those thumbnail thingies as stickers, they're up on a store right now for you to buy. I tried to make them as cheap as possible. And also, if you join my Patreon, you can get a discount on said that. And also, there's a sale on Patreon right now. So you can join the Patreon, get that discount, and also join the Discord if you wanna. Thank you, add over. I really loved it. I love how real and genuine Susie and Rousey felt during the game segment, and just generally loved all the character interactions in Chapter 4. However, I was kind of disappointed by the rhythm game in Chapter 3, since it feels kind of clunky for me to some reason. Chapter 4's music was amazing, but looking back at the soundtrack, there aren't really many tracks from Chapter 3 I find myself coming back to. I don't really get the hype around Black Knife, and it was cool hearing the Lost Girl motif and Raise Up Your Bat, but besides that, I don't really like the song. I thought they were great. For Chapter 3, all of the unique gameplay and battles, especially tennis fight, was really fun. It fits the wacky atmosphere so well, and it adds a lot of excitement. Chapter 3 caught me by surprise plenty of times, and I had a lot of fun. The story and character development in Chapter 4 was my favorite part of that, especially Gerson. He's great. I love seeing a bit more of Chris's actual personality too, and seeing the main cast interact and develop their relationships. I am anxious and excited to see where the story goes. They were amazing, and my favorite parts were when the knight showed up, and the ending to Chapter 4's Dark World. I cried while talking to Rousey about his hopelessness, and I recovered just enough to cry again when talking to Susie at the fountain. Her talk about wanting things to stay the same, wanting her friends to always be there, it really cut deep for me, because I'm someone who's been scared of the future before. I've had days where I've cried to my mom and told her I wanted to stay happy, wanted to go back to the way things were before. I love both the chapters so much. I feel like Chapter 3 was such a fun ride in terms of learning about Chris and their background, and it also unlocked so many questions about Undertale and Deltarune and how they are linked with the S-rank section and how the weird route fits into DR's narrative. Chapter 4 was just so intense with how we learned about the prophecy, and honestly my favorite section of the game was when Susie breaks the prophecy glass and confronts Rousey, and then you can comfort Rousey. Like, friendship I care about them so deeply. And I do too. So let's talk about the fun game. I think we all agree at this point that Susie is indeed the main character of the game. And she was a character to me that I was actually really surprised didn't backslide in chapter 3. And I definitely should have known better, like this is Toby Fox that we're talking about. But I think that when we see things like webcomics or games or really anything that goes on for an extended period of time or that has like different chapters and things, sometimes characters tend to do a little bit of backsliding when it comes to their character development just for the sake of keeping tension and drama. But that's exactly why I think Susie's character writing here is so good. Like she could have easily backslided into her old ways of just being impulsive and not listening. But no, Rouse explains the dark worlds to her, explains that technically none of the darkners are real, and she rejects it. It's not because she's not listening or she's being impulsive, it's because she understands what Rouse is saying and just simply doesn't believe it. I thought we were gonna have to wait until like right towards the end of the game for Susie to realize like what actually was going on with the dark worlds not really being real and the escapism motif of it all. Like there have been multiple theories about the big large theme of Deltarune being about escapism, and I think in that way we kind of sold Deltarune short to ourselves. Like we were like, yeah, it's gonna be about escapism, and yeah, but it's like so much more than that. But escapism is a really big theme. However, immediately in this chapter we see that Susie, the main person who we thought was going to cling to this escapism no matter what, she's starting to realize almost immediately in this chapter, like this isn't something that we can constantly hang on to anymore. Like Tenna is like pretty much this like the like thing of like escapism. Like he is TV and video games and stuff like that, right? Like he is this need for escapism. He wants things to go back to the way things were. Susie even talks about like how she also wants things to go back to the way they were, like I just read in that response, right? But Susie is starting to realize that that's not a thing that can really happen. Like she's playing along with Tenna's games for a pretty long time, and then eventually she realizes that this can't keep going on, right? And it ends up like almost becoming like a bid to keep Susie like entertained. Like Tenna is like, oh, we got to keep Susie entertained. Like we have to. And she's just realizing that like, no, like there's real things at stake here. There's real people at stake here. We can't just like play these games forever. Like, yeah, it was fun. It's nice to like be a hero, but we need to do the right thing and like end this. And even her conversation with Rouse in the beginning is her inviting Rouse to the festival, something that is a real thing in real life. She has a group of friends now, like real true friends, and she wants to hang out with them. And she understands that she doesn't need this buffer of the dark worlds anymore to do that. We see in chapters like 2 that she is using this as a buffer to hang out with Chris and to hang out with Rouse. But now she's like slowly realizing she doesn't need that anymore, especially after the beginning of chapter 4, where she's able to like hang out with Noelle and Chris. Well, really just Noelle, but like she's able to hang out with Noelle like all on her own, and she's like holding her own very well and making friends all on her own. It forever breaks my heart that at the beginning of chapter 3, when Susie was talking to Rouse and inviting him to the festival, that when Rouse rejects Susie immediately backtracks to her own like coping mechanism of just like, oh, I'm a rough and tumble person. No one's actually gonna want to hang out with me like actually like genuinely. So I have to put on this like front of being like really rough and like a ruffian and this, that, the third, so that people will actually want to hang out with me. No one's gonna want to hang out with me genuinely. Like that's what she does. She literally says like, we could just go and cause trouble. It's okay. It's whatever. We don't have to do anything like genuine. Like we don't have to go ride the Ferris wheel. We don't have to go play games. We can just cause trouble. We could just be what people tell me that I am, which is ruffians. And that's fine. We could just do that. We could just do that, or we could like, you know, actually go and be friends and do things. And it just breaks my heart that she reverted back to that, because she genuinely feels like no one would ever want to do anything genuine with her. I keep using the word genuine, but that's what it is. She genuinely just wants to go and have fun, you know, eat a candy apple or something probably, you know, like she just wants to do that. But she understands that like, or she feels like rather, that people wouldn't actually want to do any of those things with her. Her immediate response when Rouse initially rejects her. And of course, a lesser game and a lesser like piece of media would have immediately put in the miscommunication trope here. Like Tenna does interrupt their conversation, but he could have interrupted their conversation earlier and had them be all like, well, no, Susie, the reason why I can't go to the festival is, and then have Tenna interrupt. But no, Rouse is able to explain to Susie in this moment about the dark worlds. And again, Susie understands it. She just rejects it outright. And she's like, you can't say that you're not real because you're real to me. And like, you're sitting here and you have wants and you have needs, you have hopes and you have dreams, pun intended. And I think this leads to a kind of meta narrative about like the things that we give meaning in our lives, whether that be a game, a piece of media, like a camera, or like whatever. We give these things meanings in our life, and it could be as small as like a playing card, like the playing cards that we see in Chris's side egg world thing. Like those have meaning, they're real, and they have meaning, and they care for Chris because Chris cared for them. And I think one of the like things at the end of the game is that hopefully Dark Worlds will be able to exist on their own without like Lightner input, because they will bring their own caring and meaning to themselves. And through the bringing meaning to themselves, they will be able to do that. I feel like this can be seen when specifically Lancer is able to exist in chapter 3 because Tenna gives him meaning in this world that they are in. Same with, was it Romb, I think his name is? The power strip that they bring home from, like Chris and Azrael bring home, that they steal from the library, that is able to exist in the chapter 3 Dark World, in the TV world, because Chris and Rousey gave it meaning and it has a purpose in this world. And so I think the whole thing is at the end, they're going to give themselves meaning. Rousey is going to give himself meaning, is give himself a purpose, and therefore be able to exist on his own without like Darkner or Lightner input, rather. That's my little theory, but it's just a theory. A game theory. Anyway. But also too, Susie's rejection of just like what is supposedly the truth, right? In this case with Rousey. She also has these moments with Gerson. Gerson's character. I know he's just the wise old man trope, but the way the wise old man trope was done in this was just so good. Not only is it because Susie is a character who technically doesn't fit into the prophecy, like we all kind of agree, she's supposed to be the dragon or whatever in this prophecy, or in the story or like whatever. And she has been able to make herself so much more than that. And Gerson saw that and was like, here's a person who like can get it. Like he realizes that she is the person out of everybody else in this fucking game, is the person who's going to be the one to like reject it. And we already see that at the end when she rejects whatever the prophecy says at the end. Like we don't get to see that. She is already a person who gets to reject it. And I think Gerson was very obviously trying to tell the whole fun gang that like, hey, you know, yes, the prophecy is there, and yes, the prophecy will come true, but if you look too closely at it, like that was this whole thing he said, like if you look too closely, you'll start to miss like basically the forest for the trees or like whatever the fuck, you know, like, and the whole reading in between the lines. And I think we all, at least it's my theory, and I think a lot of people agree too, that a lot about this prophecy will be its interpretation of it and the way that it can kind of be bent and seen in a different light. Like I agree that the weird route is kind of speedrunning that prophecy in the most brutal and brute force way possible to get to an ending. And we will, when we talk about deaths, we'll get to my own theory. I watched a video yesterday. Oh, I can't wait to shout out this video because it was so fucking good. Anyway, Kingdom Hearts. That's all I gotta say. Anyway, I loved Gerson as that character who taught Susie those lessons and how she's going to take that. And even though she realized that Gerson was dead, she was able to accept it. And I think the fact that she was able to accept it and also reject the prophecy for what it is, I think says loads about her character and where her character is going. Like she was the main character of this chapter. And I think she is going to be the glue and the cog in the wrench in the machine that's gonna like cause this whole thing to like crumble down in a good way, right? Speaking of prophecies, let's talk about Rousey real quick. I'll say it. I'm sorry, Rousey. I was indeed one of those people in the camp that was like, yeah, Rousey's evil. Listen, look, I know, tomato. I know, listen. I knew that Rousey, we all knew that Rousey knew more than what he was letting on, right? We all knew that, right? I thought, however, he was doing that maliciously in the sense that I kind of like understood and had a theory in my head about like, oh, the prophecy says something maybe not so great and that he wants to do the prophecy no matter what, like push forward through the prophecy no matter who gets hurt in the process. And that's where I thought his malicious intent came in. Toby Fox said, no, I'll do you one better, okay? We have a person here who has unlimited knowledge. Now imagine if that person was burdened with the fact of unlimited knowledge and of everything that came before, is, and will be, and they are powerless to stop it. No matter how many times they try, no matter what they do, they are powerless to stop the prophecy from coming true. And obviously he knows about whatever bad thing is supposed to happen at the end. Yeah, I'm sorry, Toby Fox, I wasn't familiar with the game. It was my hubris. I'm sorry. Yeah, Rousey got me. He got me there. He got me there. Because the fact that someone burdened with knowledge in the future and just doesn't want their friends to like be in danger, but they know that this is probably the only way that it has to happen. And he thought that just by doing a pacifist route, essentially, if we just were nice to everybody and we saved everybody, we never fought anybody and we never killed anybody, then maybe the world wouldn't be cruel to us. And that, oh, and he has to learn that sometimes you will have to fight. And this is punctuated by Susie, a character who is not afraid to get rough and tumble and down and dirty, which is no wonder he was so frustrated with Susie in the first chapter, because he wanted to play by the right rules, which to him was pacifist route. And Susie was just going around knocking heads already in chapter 1. And so it's no wonder he got really frustrated with Susie. But he realized that just because you're super nice doesn't mean you have good intentions, as we all put on to Rouse, my bad. But also with Susie, just because you're rough around the edges doesn't mean you immediately have bad intentions. And he has learned that now through his own little character development, that Susie is not a bad person just because she has rougher edges. It's so good. It's so good. And sometimes you will have to fight others, and sometimes you will do things that you might regret. And overall, you will have to fight for that happy ending. All right, you're gonna have to fight tooth and nail for it, especially when it's the only one you got. And that being Rouse's like message, and also fight for the fact that like you deserve to live. Like, I'm sorry, Rouse. I was not familiar with the game. I'm sorry. All right, this is a long one, so strap in. At first, I was in love mainly with chapter 3 entirely. Like, it's amazing, especially with Rule's card and Tenna too. He's so charismatic and unbelievably interesting to see how he interacts with Chris. Because not only is the whole chapter in the place where they grew up, but because Chris made the fountain and the night, which we'll get to, don't worry. But chapter 4, I was not ready. I was not ready for Gerson Boom, freaking Lord of the Hammer. I'm gonna cry just thinking about it. The whole arc with Susie and him as her mentor, it's just, I'm so sad that he will most likely not appear again. I admit the church section didn't trigger me as much as I thought it would have, and I love Caddy just rambling about the prophecy. And Susie and Chris shenanigans were just so cute. The two of them almost feel like siblings to me, especially since that scene in the coffee shop where the two of them draw on the window, in the same way that Chris and Azrael used to. And I don't know if it's just because I'm an Undertale fan that I've been listening to the OST on repeat for years, but having new Toby Fox music is just so healing to me. And wow, what bangers. I can't even get around to make a playlist because there are just so many now. I'm overwhelmed. And the latter half of chapter 4, every single scene with Susie, like she is the one discovering everything basically. Since Chris knows more than the player, the only way we can get important secret information is through her, someone that also doesn't know much. Her reaction to Gerson being dead, the whole part of the church about the prophecy with Rouse, and Rouse, my beloved. I love how things built up even since chapter 1 with his issues on self-worth and his purpose. I relate and love him so much. I don't care if he's evil or whatever. And I feel like I can't even mention how insane that ending was. Literally a Titan showed up, holy shit. And Sans befriended Toriel again. When I saw that whole scene, I laughed so hard, probably because I wasn't exactly playing the game and knew for a fact that Toriel had interesting interactions with alcohol because of the Undertale alarm clock. But still, I think about it now, it's kind of sad for Chris. And I'm really glad we get to see more of Toriel's negative traits starting to show up. Overall, everything. It would be almost easier to say what wasn't my favorite part. These chapters were so good. I enjoyed it a lot. Chapter 3, I think, was very fun overall and more lighthearted, but still managed to blend silly stuff with more emotional moments, which in general is something that Deltarune does really well, which I like. All of the new characters were really fun, and I don't think I was ever bored playing chapter 3. And that night fight at the end, I genuinely didn't believe that that was the night up until the flavor text appeared. I did not think we would have a night battle in chapter 3, but honestly, as hard as the fight is, it is probably my favorite fight so far in Deltarune. It is very fun to play, and Black Knife is such a good track. Chapter 4's Light World section was so fun. Literally everything that happened at Noelle's house was great. I especially love the scene where Chris and us are inside Dessa's wardrobe, and Chris is hitting us with a hockey stick, and Susie and Noelle hear none of this sitting in the same room. Maybe if they weren't so busy being gay, they would have discovered Chris's soul shenanigans by now. But in all seriousness though, I really like that we got to see more of Chris's personality outside of our influence. They actually blessed and stuff. And them playing the piano at Noelle's house after the mysterious phone call. Chapter 4, with its more serious tone, was the first Deltarune chapter that made me full on sob. So many good emotional moments, especially in the Dark World. Chris playing the piano, the scene where Rouse breaks down in the second sanctuary, Gerson mentioning Susie, the last prophecy line at the end, when it's raining somewhere else starts playing but without Sans motif and it's called The Place Where It Rained. Yeah, there are probably some scenes I'm forgetting that made me go insane, but this entire chapter was, in my opinion, the most impressive chapter yet. I'm so excited for the rest. Also, chapter 4's weird route, I don't even know what to say about it other than the whole time I was playing it, I was repeating, why am I doing this? So I think the game achieved what it was managing to do. Also, playing the weird route is very funny when Chris and Noelle are my favorite characters. Me when I'm bored and I have to traumatize my favorite characters. There's gonna be more scrolling on the screen, hopefully. Okay, now it's time to correct a wrong that I did in my last video. I'm sorry. So in my last video, I neglected to talk about Spamton and Tenna because I did not know, first of all, that they were like canonically exes. Didn't know that. I love how we all hyped up Tenna to be this like maniacal, manipulative, like bad guy who was like, we knew he was gonna be like very cheery and like overly happy, but we thought he was gonna have this like dark and twisted side to him, especially based off of the stuff that like Spamton told us about. And that's just like the way that these two are so exes, because the way anyway, but we thought this TV dude was Mike, not Tenna. So now here we are in chapter 3, and Tenna's just like your weird divorced uncle who like really cares for you and just wants you to be happy. He also like kind of got catfished, or I guess technically he didn't get catfished because he never got to see Spamton. Like my whole thing with that is, what I think happened, correct me if I'm wrong, but what I believe to be happened is whoever contacted Spamton, right? We still don't know who contacted Spamton. Was it the Knight? Was it Gaster? We don't know. Somebody contacted Spamton back when he was in Addison to make him like, not just famous, but like successful, right? And he got successful. He got his success. He was making deals, all this other type of stuff. At some point, I think he calls Tenna. I don't know how they meet, but like they knew of each other at some point. I don't think they ever met face to face. Either that, or if you want to go down the really, really bad angsty route, which I think may have happened, is that Spamton just like became disfigured over time because of like what was happening to him with the whole big shot stuff and whatever. And so he just became so horribly disfigured over time that he is just irrecognizable to Tenna, which makes me sad and, you know, bring on the angst. AO3 writers, where you at? But anyway, so Spamton was a big shot Addison. At some point, he calls Tenna and promises him like to pretty much, in my opinion, like make him non-obsolete, like, you know, bring him, maybe make him into a smart TV. We don't know. But like basically offers him a bunch of stuff, right, to become a big shot and yada, yada, yada. The whole thing with Mike, I think I don't even know. I don't even know what to say about Mike. Like whether or not, I think Mike was just supposed to be like, I actually don't know. I was about to say something, but I was like, I literally don't know. Like some people think Mike was never supposed to be like a really big, huge character, but because Spamton kept mentioning Mike, we all thought Mike was going to be the next secret boss, because like Jevil mentioned like Spamton, and now Spamton mentioned Mike, so we thought Mike was going to be the next like big diabolical thing. Again, breaking the norms of how we think about these chapters. I will get to that at the end. But anyway, so whatever, Mike, Spamton, Tenna, right? For some reason, whoever was speaking to Spamton yoinked all that shit away. Like, stop speaking to Spamton through the phone. You know, it was all garbage noise, all that type of stuff, yada, yada, yada. And Spamton immediately lost whatever big shotness he had. So he wasn't making deals anymore. He wasn't this big shot anymore. And in doing so, pretty much, like, abandoned or, like, ghosted Tenna. And Tenna had no idea. Like, Tenna was just like, this person just abandoned me. Like, just stopped making calls to me. They stopped telling me stuff and all this yada, 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 and blah, blah, blah. And so because of that, Tenna holds, like, some type of animosity towards Spamton. And you can see if you get a Z rank on like all of the boards or like whatever, you get access to the Z rank room, the green room, and it is very clear like this was supposed to be like Spamton's room. You can see like boards about ads. There's a phone off the hook. Okay, like, you know, so it's very clear this was supposed to be like Spamton's room, but because Tenna feels betrayed by Spamton, just completely just like, you know, wipe that whole shit out. And because of that, we still need to know like who was trying to contact Spamton, and we still need to know who was telling Tenna to like kidnap Toriel, and if they just hand over Toriel, everything will be fine, they won't get thrown away, yada, 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 blah, blah, blah. Was that the Knight? Was it Carol? Was it somebody else? Like we was it Chris? Like we don't know. We don't know at this point. It couldn't have been Chris, because Chris, he says it right in front of Chris, so like unless Chris was, I don't know, like it's a lot of like speculation there. Like let me know your little theories about that. That specifically is still like something that needs to be like talked about. I know like we all talk about the Knight, which we'll get to next, but I think there's like more players to this. Like chapter 3 and 4, if anything, just introduced a whole new group of players into this world that we don't even know about. Like and we don't even know if like the Knight specifically has like can talk. Because so far they haven't like said anything. They've just screamed and roared. So like there's a lot of things going on. Let me know your theories. But yeah, of course, speaking of, let's talk about the Knight, the goddamn Knight. I didn't know you could save before the Knight boss fight. So I died. I immediately died because like I had just beaten Tenna and I had like this much health left. And like I just thought like, oh, there's no reason to like, I didn't know there was a save point, first of all, back the other way. And I was just like, let's just continue on with what's going on. And then immediately got my ass handed to me in one hit. And then I was like, okay, well, I guess you're just supposed to lose that fight. I did not know you could win that fight. So again, me wanting to go back and like replay the whole thing, I absolutely will. Oh my God, the knight. I think we all, again, thought that we weren't getting the knight or Titan, which I'll talk about that later, until the end of the like game. Like, yes, this is technically the climax because it's the middle point of the story. So it technically is the climax, so it makes sense, but it's also just like, we thought this was gonna be like final boss territory. Like we thought the knight and therefore a Titan were gonna be like final boss things, and they feel like final bosses. Like they look like final bosses, they feel like final bosses. Specifically their aesthetic is so different from everything that we've seen in Deltarune thus far. And I'll talk about that more when we talk about like the Titan, because nobody is talking about the Titan in the way that the Titan looks and why like nobody's fucking talking about it. And I think it's just because it's such an enigma of a thing that like showed up out of nowhere. But anyway, first let's talk about the knight. The knight's like, oh, their appearance, the fact that they have a bunch of after images, which like is like, to me, feels like they're not like stabilized to this world. The fact that they're kind of just like a blob that can like change their shape at will. Oh my God, if this has anything to do with Gaster, like it's gonna be fucking insane, bro. It's gonna be insane. Now, that all being said, Des is the knight, right? Like, I think we can all agree on that. Like, Des is the knight. Like, I know a lot of people are saying like, no, it's so obvious. Like, Des being the knight is so obvious. Yes, but as we've seen with other things that have been obvious in this game, it's never just that. Like with the whole Rouse thing, it wasn't just that Rouse knew more than what he was letting on. It's the fact that he was burdened by it. The fact that it had to do with his own character arc and his character development. The fact that the prophecy is so much more than we ever thought that it was. And it was stuff that was like in plain sight, right? And so I think Des being the knight is the correct answer, but it's not just Des is the knight. It's Des is the knight and a whole bunch of other stuff, which is obviously just theories right now. For me, I'll tell you my theory, and then I'll tell you how I adjusted my theory in a second. So my initial theory was that this is Des, but this is just a version of Des. This is like the remnants of Des left over, because I think the real Des, or her real consciousness or whatever, is trapped in the space in between. You know, the whole thing about being shattered across space and time with Gaster is the fact that he fell into his creation and then got shattered across space and time. My whole thing is that I'm gonna say this, and I need you to stick with me. So there, Des, Azrael, and maybe Chris as this third person went into the bunker, the shelter. I should stop calling it the bunker, it's the shelter. Went into the shelter. They discovered a dark world in that shelter. Why they went into the shelter specifically, I think it's just because they're kids who like to do roughhousing, playing around and stuff like that, yada, yada, yada. We also get confirmation from the little dino kid that is something that Chris used to do, which was go inside of that bunker and like all this stuff, and then something bad happened. So I think what they did is the three of them went into that bunker and they found a dark world, or maybe even it was just Des and Azrael first, and then they brought Chris in later when they found out about the prophecy, and they thought it was a video game. There is so much video game motif inside of Deltarune that's more than just like, oh, this is like a video game, you're playing a video game, ha ha ha, meta, you're playing a video game. Like, no, much like in Undertale with the whole idea of determination and the whole idea of saving and loading and yada yada yada, actually having bearance not just on the fighting but also the plot, here as well we're taking it even a step further. Everything that happens inside of the dark world feels like a video game to them, so they treat it as a video game and they don't realize that all of this is like technically real or like whatever. And so they speed run the prophecy. They're just going through the game, they just go through the prophecy, and then they get to the end, and whatever bad thing was going to happen at the end of the prophecy, they get to the end and it's too late. They can't stop it. They never saw the end of the prophecy until they got there, and they were like, oh shit, now we at the end of the prophecy, either the world's gonna end, somebody has to sacrifice themselves, somebody has to die, yada yada yada, like something along those nature, right? And then Des either sacrifices herself or what have you. Something happens to Chris that makes them lose, I think, their own soul, in my opinion. And somehow through that gain our soul and the player soul, right? And therefore the prophecy is technically like done. Like maybe if they don't complete the prophecy, the world will end. Like once you start the prophecy, you have to keep it going. This idea of like cycles, and I talk about like technically something like a time loop, whereas like if you start this prophecy, you have to complete it, otherwise the world will end, right? Like you have to complete it. And in that way, maybe it's one of those things where like there was a knight already and Des had to take the form of the knight and is slowly losing herself, like slowly losing her real self, right? And that's why the whole thing with like, oh, well, Chris mirrors the knight and the knight mirrors Chris. I think personally, like on a like character level, I think that is because Chris and Des are like this. Like, yes, we know Des and Noelle were like this, but I also think Des and Chris were like this. Like, just judging by how like ruffian type of like bad kid, I put that all in quotes, we see Dess's room as, it seems to me that like Chris, as somebody who also has more of that ruffian spirit, would look up to Des in that way. And so to me, it seems like maybe the fact that they mirror each other, that's Chris mirroring Des, right? And maybe doing all that is trying to appeal to Des's like human side of like, maybe she's still in there somewhere. We also know that like there is a person who's reaching out through the code, and that's where I think like the real Des is, or like the rest of Des's consciousness that can bring her back into being a full person. There's like a person that's been speaking out in the code since chapter 1, and it's something that you can only find if you dig through the code, which Toby Fox knew people would do. And so he purposely put stuff in there that like is supposedly Des, we all assume it's Des, who's reaching out, who's like in the in-between, shadow cross space and time, and she's trying to find a way out, right? And so I think whatever happened, like they get to the end of the prophecy, they have to like somehow, like Des has to sacrifice herself to become the next knight, basically, and is slowly losing herself. And maybe in a fit of like panic, like Chris tells Carol, and Carol's like, it's okay. Like maybe she already knew about the bunker, or like whatever. Maybe she did it first. We talk about cycles. Maybe she did it first, and whoever became the knight after that. And that's maybe why she's so protective of Noelle, because she knows that Noelle could be the next person to become the knight, or like whatever, and take over that cycle. I believe firmly in this, the whole thing is a cycle. So the whole thing is that Chris has done this before, and they're trying to find a way to either break it in the same way that Rouse is trying to break it. And like Rouse came out of also that the last like cycle with Azrael and whatnot, and they're trying to like make the next cycle happen and try to break the cycle and trying to prevent that from happening, which is why Chris hates you so much for doing the weird route, because you're just speed running the prophecy, and you're gonna have to like sacrifice somebody at the end, probably someone like Noelle for like whatever reason, in order for the world to be reset properly, right? So it's kind of like a time loop, but not really. It's just more like it's the cycle that people have to go through. Like whoever decides to take on the prophecy or whatever, you have to go through the cycle like a video game, and if you don't, when you get to the end, like that's it. And so maybe it's like one of those things where it's like the soul or the player, it's like a new player plays this game every time, and they have to get to the end of the game one way or another, and that includes like sacrificing somebody. I don't know, that's just my theory about it. And then I watched this video I'm gonna put it here, and essentially oh my god, this video is so good. Please go watch it. Please fucking go watch it. Essentially, I can't remember most of it, but the part I did remember, and the reason why I mentioned Kingdom Hearts earlier, is because they were basically saying that the knight is like an echo of like Noelle, or I mean Des, and like, or it's like Des without a soul, like without her own soul. And I'm like, so like heartless, so like a nobody, so like Kingdom Hearts. I even commented on the video, I was like, Kingdom Hearts? And then a question mark, because that's really what it was giving. And now I can't unsee it. And I'm like, yeah, if we're like, this person in the code is Des, but also the knight is Des. These are two like separate entities, but one is without a soul and one has been corrupted and taken over. Girly, that's just Kingdom Hearts. Like, people are all like, oh yeah, Toby Fox took from Yume Nikki, he took from Earthbound and all of this and yada yada yada. Girly, no, it's Kingdom Hearts. anyway But yeah, please go watch that video. It's so good. It talks about like what the original fun game could have been, which I have been sitting here saying forever. I think that the whole thing is that they've done this before, and then Chris is trying to stop it in whatever way Chris knows how to from happening again. And Rouse is just a byproduct of that first attempt. And whatever. So that's my theory. I guess that's my really big, huge theory about like the game and where I think it's going, and about like the past and what happened to Des and stuff like that. And they even mentioned in the video, and I agree with this, about Asgore and specifically how he relates to all this. And basically Des turns into the knight. They leave the bunker, they're running from the bunker. Chris and Azrael get pulled out of the bunker. And then Asgore shuts the bunker, knowing that Des is probably still in there. And in doing so, obviously that was probably the right thing to do, but to everybody else, to the public, you left a kid down there to rot, essentially. So that's why it's like he's off the forest, and Mayor Holiday, like, she doesn't seem too like banged up about it, and I think that's because she is in this kind of crazy state where she's like, I can get my child back, and I know how to get my child, or at least I'm going to attempt to know how to get my child back, right? And Asgore is so ready to also help, seemingly. And so that's why we see this whole thing in chapter 4 about like Toriel being upset that Carol is enabling Asgore, because maybe she's just like, it's a lost cause, you need to stop. And maybe Rudy also feels the same, like it's a lost cause, you need to stop. But obviously she's like, no, like that's my daughter and I'm going to get her back. Maybe that's part of the reason why she left Des's like room in such pristine condition. Not only is that like a grieving process, but it's also like the kind of like, I won't say delusional, because, you know, maybe Des will come back, who knows, but like just kind of the mental thing there of like, no, I'm going to get my daughter back, and when she comes back she's going to be here. They also mentioned, I think in that video, that like maybe the reason why the room is like that is because the like we need to like bring Des back into her own soul, and like keeping her room as pristine like that may bring her back or some way like that. I'm probably butchering that, so please go watch their video. Please go watch their video. It's so good. It's so good. Kingdom Hearts, bitch. Like, oh my god. Anyway, that's like my big theory about it, and it's nice to feel vindicated by someone else sharing similar versions of that theory. Guys, okay, in the Discord, which you guys can join if you join the Patreon, someone mentioned this video by V Hoffman called ... which can mean nothing, a spam tenna post-mortem, which basically goes over every single piece of like spam tenna that has ever existed between, you know, chapters 2 and 3 now, which, oh my god, it's so good. Look, I ship anything. Y'all know me. Like, I am a multi-shipper to my core, okay? So you don't even have to really convince me to ship spam tenna. But I obviously do now. But that's not what we're talking about, because otherwise this would be in the tenna section. First of all, go watch this video. It's so good. It'll be linked in the description along with the other video. Secondly, this person went on to say that, oh, you know, Spamton and Tenna, like, really just getting into the way they see each other, and has come to the conclusion, and now I realize too, that they blame each other for whatever happened. It is very clear that they had plans to be together, even if you think it's not in a romantic way. I think it's in a romantic way, but like, even if you don't think it's in a romantic way, they very clearly have some type of like past of wanting to help each other out with something, this, that, the third, whatever. And whatever happened that drove them away from each other, they blame each other for. And like, remember, this is because in chapter 2, Spamton went on this big tirade about Tenna and how like bad he was and yada yada yada, you know, curse you Tenna, yada yada yada. And so we're sitting here thinking, oh my god, Tenna and by extension Mike are like some crazy manipulative, like mean person, whatever, Darkner, the next Darkner, whatever. Come to find out he's just your sad gay uncle, right? But like on the opposite side, Tenna blames Spamton for what happened. So we're sitting here like, A, what happened? And B, like, how did they end up blaming each other for something that happened? Now listen to what I just said. Does that not sound like a clear-cut case of a miscommunication trope? But you may be asking, where did that miscommunication from? And this is where V Hoffman's video comes into play. So they're saying specifically that it could have been, and they mentioned this for like half a second, and I was like, whoa, you can't just mention that. And now the seed has been planted in my head, and now I believe it. That possibly the person who like drove them apart was Gaster. And that's assuming, if we assume Gaster is like God in this case, who like gave Spamton like whatever magical mumbo jumbo he got, so he was like a big shot and like doing all this stuff, and then stripped it away from him. Why did he get it stripped away from him? Do we really ever know why specifically he got it stripped away from him? It just seems like one of those things where it's like he flew too close to the sun, but it's like, who decides where the sun is? Who decides what flying too close to it means? But V Hoffman brings up a good point of like, what if Spamton was trying to share whatever this like gift from God he got to Tenna? And this, the reason why I bring this up now, not just because like, oh my god, that video is so good, especially if you like Spam Tenna, but also because in the beginning of this video, I talked about the fact that I think with the Darkners, the whole thing at the end of it is that the Darkners have to give themselves meaning in order to live without the Lightners' input, basically. Like, I think that's the way it's gonna go, because there's no way we're gonna get to the end of this and just be like, okay, Rouse, bye, we're never gonna see you. I mean, like, maybe it'll be like bittersweet in that way, but I don't really see that, especially because we've already had that setup now that like Susie thinks Rouse is real, and so for at the end of this, Rouse to truly deeply just not be real, I don't know, unless again Rouse has a lot more to do with Azrael that we're not seeing just yet. But we've already seen Rouse take a stand to be himself, right? Rouse has even said to us, and I'm not gonna lie, I did choose that option, in chapter 3, when you talk about why the fuck you look like Azrael, Rouse goes, this is the one part of myself that I actually like, so shut the fuck up. And you know what? Fucking valid. He's valid for that, you know? But that is all set up for Rouse coming into his own and being his own person. And so to have all of that happen, for him to go through this character arc just to be like, psych, he's not real, I just don't think that's gonna happen. And so assuming that that's not gonna happen, again, this idea that like he has to become his own person some way somehow, and same with like Queen, like everybody making their own rooms as well, like everything is becoming so personalized to them. They have to ask themselves what they want to do, what they want out of this life, right? And so going back to Spamtenna, it going off of all of that, what if that's not what God wants? You know, what if that's not what God wants? You are NPCs in this video game and you're not supposed to mess with the simulation or whatever the fuck, you know? And so what if, what if the whole thing with Spamtenna is that they were giving each other meaning? You know, if we look at it through a romantic lens, they were starting to give each other meaning. They were starting to lean on each other. They didn't need a Lightner to give them anything. And what if that's what made God angry? God being Gaster in this case. Guys. Please go watch this video, because now I am on board with this. And somehow, some way, Gaster was like, you know, maybe whispering into Spamton's ear, maybe whispering into Tenna's ear without either of them knowing. Boom, now they hate each other. Clear-cut miscommunication trope. Now they hate each other, and it's all God's fault. Anyway, I'm going fucking crazy. I'm sorry that this is so long and this added like 5 more minutes to this video, but I needed to talk about this. Please go watch this fucking video. But of course, I'm not the only one with theories. You guys had theories as well, so let's read through a couple of them. So these are my Patreon theories. I think the Flower Kingdom will be next. I will be shocked if it turns out to be a red herring. Toby has made it clear we shouldn't always expect patterns to be followed. But given chapter 2 had Spamton and Chris reflecting one another's situation, and Susie and Tenna both bonding over similar fears and abandonment issues, I'm wondering if it'll be Rousey's turn to have a foil character. Given Asgore is heavily implied to be the next Dark World boss, I could see divorced dad of all time getting weirdly attached to Rousey, because, you know, of course, Rousey looks like Azrael. Yes, I agree. You kind of see a bit of that needing to fill a void energy with how Toriel handles Susie. It's kind of sweet, but when she gets drunk and offers Susie her son's bed, it becomes clear Goat Mom has some empty nest issues. Asgore is not as subtle as Toriel when it comes to his feelings. Also, I have to ask, because no one seems to ever point it out, but what is the deal with pink and yellow? Why are these two colors always a thing and so often relate to characters that have gone mad or weird glitchy creepypasta nightmares? Spamton and Friend's eyes. Why is the chapter 5 field described as pink and gold? Is it because they're Asgore's main colors, or is it more? With one of the song titles being called The Place Where It Rained, I swear it's revealed that Deltarune sands and possibly also Papyrus are the same ones as in Undertale, and they somehow get isekai'd to the world of the latter as a prequel. I swear I will lose my shit. What if the 3 people mentioned in the photo you can find in UT are Deltarune characters? That would be insane. I saw a headcanon/theory by a blog named Coolfire333 on Tumblr that Spamton's Thorn Ring is a corrupted version of a ring he once intended for Tenna, but his hatred of Tenna warped the ring into a thing that causes pain and which the player can use to force Noelle into a twisted relationship. The blog admitted it could be a stretch, but I like it because I can't think of another reason why Spamton would have it unless the knight or somebody gave it to him. He calls it his commemorative ring. What is / was it commemorating? Also, the Spamton sweepstakes had an image of a wedding ring which linked to a rant from Spamton and about Tenna, who we now know. Well, there you go. Whoa, that I love that. Actually, I love that. Tenna and Spamton. Oh, I love that. I love that. They are actually not even divorced. They're like exes who were supposed to get married, like ex-fiancés. They were supposed to get married. They were supposed to live on together forever and ever and ever, and that just didn't happen. It also makes me wonder about the video game that Chris played. Speaking of like Undertale like references, it makes me wonder about the video game that like Chris played when you do the when you try to get the, I think it's the secret boss in chapter 3 technically, when you have to play the video game, that you have to go through a bunch of different characters that not only mimic like characters that you would have fought if you did the weird route, but also Undertale characters. And I'm not the only one who has like thought about this, about how a lot of these characters in this game represent Undertale characters. And so now I'm sitting here like, what if the game that Chris was playing, what if that game is Undertale in a way? And it gets like real meta. That's why we talk about a parallel or alternate story, right? Like, it's an alternate story. It's a parallel story because it's happening at the same time, because the game that is being played in Deltarune is Undertale. But Undertale is also its own world. Like, girl, It's a game within a game within a game, guys. That would be absolutely insane. But also to the pink and gold thing about Asgore, I think that's really interesting because we have been seeing a lot of pink and gold, and now we get Asgore. And so now it's like wondering if Asgore is going to go crazy, like if he's going to be the next person to go crazy for whatever reason. Maybe he like goes too far and he's the one, oh, that could be really interesting because pink and gold has been like a very specific color palette for now. And now it's heavily associated with Asgore. Like that is his colors. Oh, I can't wait for that. That was a good one. That was a good one. Personally, I have really been wondering about the Knight and Gaster. They obviously have some sort of connection, the holes in the hands. My personal theory is this. We know that Gaster was split into multiple pieces across time and space. I think that both the person we talked to at the beginning of the game and at the end of chapter 4 and the Forgotten Man are both Gaster. The Forgotten Man doesn't remember who he is, but funnily enough, not only speaks in a similar way to Gaster, but says exactly whether 11 hours or 11 years Deltarune will be waiting. If you've seen the weird Valentine's Day letter from Toby Fox's newsletters, that was also theorized to be Gaster. You will see that he repeats a lot of the things the Forgotten Man talks about in chapter 3 too. I very much think that somehow part of Gaster got split and stuck into these in-between states. And so this one, again, I'll have it scrolling on screen, goes on to talk about like the relationship to Des that has, and how I literally just talked about the fact that like Des and the Knight are two split entities after being shattered across time and space. You are now more than one entity. And actually, I believe that. A lot of people were saying that the Forgotten Man and the person in the Valentine's Day newsletter isn't Gaster because of the way that they talk. Like, if the whole theory that I have about Des and the person in the code is true, those are both Des. They're just different versions of Des, different shattered versions of Des. So that means that this person, the Forgotten Man, which is the Eggman, right? The Forgotten Man, the newsletter person, and Gaster, or we assume to be Gaster, speaking to us at the beginning of the game or between each chapter, literally could just be Gaster, just different versions of Gaster that is split among space and time. That would make sense. And I don't think I've seen really anybody talk about that. So like, kudos to you for doing that, about how that could be Gaster. People were thinking that this character, like the Forgotten Man and the person in the Valentine's Day newsletter, had to be a completely different person because they just didn't match Gaster's like mannerisms in the way that we know Gaster to speak. But now with this theory, to me, it's very clear that this is Gaster. It's just a bunch of different versions of Gaster. You're onto something. You're onto something. I'm onto something. We're onto something. This might sound crazy, but bear with me. I believe that Chris killed Des. Des's ashes were taken into a dark world where she was brought back as a Darkner. Darkner Des was then given a soul and was able to go back into the light world with it as the Knight. Chris killed Des in chapter 3's sword route, the portion with the ice palace. For the third and final section, you have to find the person in the white robe and use ice magic. Knowing that almost everything in the sword route mini games was a reference to the weird route, you can glean that this person is meant to be Noelle. There are 2 deer sprite sheets, one brown and one black, that go unused in the game. Unused except for the fact that they are placeholder sprites that load over 2 entities. The brown one initially loads over the white robed person. The black one loads over the black monster in a room with a puzzle where it copies your movements. Once you solve the puzzle, but standing on the button yourself and making the monster go to the other button, the holes in the room fill up, and now you can now walk to the monster and kill it. But you don't. You now only control the monster, and your only option is to walk up to Chris. Once you do, Chris will kill the monster themselves, and then everything returns to normal. If the brown deer loading over the ice mage is saying that the entity is representing Noelle, then it's safe to assume that the same is true for the black deer, Des. And yeah, I think this is an interesting theory that could very well be true. I think that either by accident or unintentionally, like again, maybe they thought this was all just a video game. So when Chris killed Des, they thought like, oh, this has no bearing on real life because this is all just a video game. It doesn't matter, right? And then Chris went through with it and then accidentally killed Des in that way. Most prevailing theory is that the big evil of the prophecy is that the only way to save the world is with a time loop. The world being in danger of ending is the game about to end. The only way for this not to happen would be for the game to reset, either through the heroes failing or the player just starting a new game. First of all, thematically, it makes a lot of sense. A large portion of Deltarune seems to be about nostalgia, scared of change, wanting things to stay the same and just the way they are. The meta side is also about the separation of realities, about how the media we consume isn't real and how falling into it or the darkness is unhealthy. Like seriously, if you look up the prophecy Rouse tells us from his perspective, it's just about people being consumed by escapist tendencies and eventually having to face the real world. I think big hints were given in both chapters 3 and 4, with Tenno's whole thing being desperate to pull for the past and not wanting the TV to turn off. And Gerson telling Susie all good stories have to end, while she tells Chris she wants tomorrow to be the same as yesterday and the next day to just be the same as that. In my opinion, the evil fountain opening squad, the fun gang, and the player all want the same thing: escapism. The Knights team by opening the fountains, the fun gang by hoping an eternity of their friendship, and us by playing the game. The similarity of interest is going to cause a waver in their spirits on if they really should be opposing the roaring, if it will give them what they want. And I actually agree with this. I think here's the thing about all of these. I think all of these are right in like some way. Like, I feel like we all have pieces. We're just like, we need to just put the pieces together, and maybe we're like missing a piece here or there, right? I think that is very true about like everybody has their own version of escapism that they're trying to get from, you know, opening dark worlds, from being in the dark worlds, yada, yada, yada. And I really like the idea of the prophecy possibly being like the whole time loop thing, of it being like a loop that constantly has to be reset. Otherwise the world will end, aka the game will end. Hi, Shadow. Oh, I scared her. She was looking at something and I scared her. Come here. She does not care. Anyway, but this whole world being like a game and not wanting said game to end because then the world will end, I think is very, very interesting. And I think at least a part of that is probably true, right? And that's maybe why the whole thing with defeating the Knight ends the world. It ends the game. The game is over. So I think the big bad being the Knight is that you're supposed to defeat it. You defeat the Knight, the game ends, and you have to turn it off, right? But that means that possibly the world will end, like Deltarune as we know it will end, right? And they don't want that. So in order to keep the world going, in order to keep the game going, a new Knight has to come through. You see how like that kind of connects to like my theory and stuff like that? So wow, like part of that, like, I don't know. Is this what it feels like to like really believe in a theory? I'm like, part of that has to be true, right? Like at least a part of it, maybe, possibly, who knows? So as other theories scroll here, I want to lastly talk about the secret bosses, the Titan, and where we think the game is going from here. I love how Deltarune continues to just completely shatter expectations. I'm glad that basically no one's theory is correct. The Titan we all thought was supposed to be this in-game, late-game thing. It ended up being the climax of the game. Like, look at this and tell me this doesn't scream late stage, let's defeat God RPG-esque like type shit. Like, tell me that it doesn't look like that. It absolutely does. And also, nobody is talking, like, I've only seen a couple of videos about like the Titan being made. Y'all need to get on it. Deltarune community, y'all need to get on it. Because why is no one talking about the Titan? Like, why does the Titan look like this? The entire aesthetic of the Titan is completely different from anything we have seen thus far. And nobody is talking about it. Like, nobody's talking about like what this could possibly mean going forward. Will we see this again? Or will it be a return to form? And honestly, I think it'll slightly be a return to form, at least at the beginning of chapter 5, where we're in the whatever dark world we enter is going to be semi-normal, and I put that in quotes. Maybe it won't be. It'll be either semi-normal or completely insane. Like there's no like in between with that. But like completely normal in the sense that like it's gonna be probably Asgore's perfect world, right? Someone's gonna open a dark world. Actually, I can see him opening a dark world now that we know that he's trying to like figure out all the things with the black shards and yada yada yada. He might end up opening a dark world inside of his flower shop, and inside of this flower shop it's like a flower version of his house, like the old house, and like the flower versions of the family and stuff like that. Like it's gonna get really uncanny and really weird really quickly. I already know. I told you it's gonna be your favorite episode of Divorce Court. Like it really is. It really fucking is. But anyway, but with that, I think that it'll slowly start to get really weird and corrupted and uncanny over the time of the chapter. But like the whole thing with the Titan is that aesthetic, we have not seen that aesthetic before. Like all of the little, like every character, every person that you fight in, or every monster rather that you fight in the dark worlds, have little attacks that are related to what they are. Like even the little weird organ piano looking creatures in the church world, their attacks are all related to music, right? But we get to the Titan and none of it makes sense. Like it's these real weird like fetus amalgamation things, and then it's like little spiky things, and then it's like a mouth, and then it's like fingers, like really like finger, like what's with the fingers? What the fuck? And then these little fish thing that go around. Like why is no one talking about what the fuck these things are? Like what are they? It's really fucking weird, and nobody is talking about it. Like what is the Titan? What does it have to, like, why does it look like this, but its attacks look like this? You know what I mean? Like, it's so, like, the big circles make sense, but everything else doesn't. And I think that's really interesting. I think if we say this about the Knight as well, like the Knight's attacks and the way that the Knight's attacks look, Like, I think we need to have a conversation about that. Like, nobody's talking about it. Like, I couldn't even begin to describe to you what those are supposed to be other than the little fetus things. But it's like, because it hatches, it's a thing that hatches. So it's like, okay, why does it hatch? Like, why does Titan hatch? Like, all these questions, like, no one's anyway. Oh my God. But yes, I think that complete departure in style, like art style towards the end, like it fits, like it's pixel art and it fits in the world of Deltarune that way. But the animation and all that, like obviously it's really good. But the fact that I feel like it's purposefully almost out of style with the rest of the game. Like even chapter 3, I mean, like the beginning of chapter 3, like it's very kooky and it's well in line with the lightheartedness of chapters 1 and 2. And even towards the end, when you get more serious, like it's okay, this all fits though within this chapter, except for the night, obviously. Then you go to chapter 4, and while yes, things are a lot more serious and a lot more somber because of the setting that you're in, everything still largely is like the same kooky lighthearted thing. Like the designs and everything still makes sense for this world until you open Susie's dark world and everything is fucked and different and it's weird as shit and it's scary. It's really fucking scary. Also, I was talking about like the amazing like mechanics in this game. Like there's so many new mechanics that came in through this game. Like the whole thing with the sound playing when you were like fighting Shadow Gerson or whoever the fuck that was. Like, oh, it was so cool. I was so thoroughly like on the edge of my seat during this section of the game. Oh my God, it was so good. It was so good. And I love that we can make theories and things like that, but we can expect the unexpected. And I love that. I love that about Toby Fox. Like, even though there are some similarities to other games and other medias and blah, 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 the fact that we can expect the unexpected makes this game like 10 out of 10 in my book. I don't know. Guys, we only have to wait a year. We only have to wait a year. Last time we had to wait like, what, 4 or 5 years? 6 years? How long has it been? 2019, right? 2019, 21, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, 6 years. We've had to wait like 6 years, but we won't have to wait any much longer. We only got to wait a year. And people have been able to make Deltarune theories for the last 6 years. Y'all got to get on it. This is why I'm doing one big video, because I know some Deltarune people who like their whole channel is Deltarune. Oh, they're gonna be fed for the next year, but they kind of gotta get on it now. Like you can't sit there and make a video every 6 months, babe. We don't got that much time anymore. We don't got that much time anymore, because you're gonna make a video and then it's gonna become obsolete once the new chapter comes out, which is fine. Like we all know this as theorists, like it's all fine if your theory becomes obsolete. But like if you're in the middle of making a theory that you know is gonna take 6 months to make, you better get on that shit. You better get on that shit, because you ain't got 6 months, and then like 6 months from now, and then we don't know when in 2026. It could come out at the beginning of 2026. It could come out exactly a year from now. It could come out at the end of 2026. Y'all gotta get on it. Thank you for watching all the way to the end. If you did, you are a real one. Oh God, I have the Deltarune worm brains in my head. Anyway, I just want to say thank you, and thank you to everybody who supported me over the last couple videos. It's been really, really great. We reached 20K. We're at like 20 something K right now. That's so crazy. I want to do like a celebration live stream. Maybe we can talk about more Deltarune theories. Maybe I do kind of need to play Deltarune again, though I might just do that off stream. But if any other game you want me to play, I've been playing through Ace Attorney Apollo Justice. So if you want that on stream, I also downloaded Date Everything. I've been playing that. So if you want that on stream, let me know down in the comments below. And shout out to all of my Patreons. I will list them out now. Little Yapper tier, we have Vivian M, Toast 1612, Reese F, Pastel Sunsets, 1 in 1,000, Luna Lula Moon, Leela Libby, Jester, Gianna M, Basil, AC, Aaron, and at our average Yapper tier we have Twilby, and at our big Yapper tier we have Covalence. Thank you so much. Thank you all again for supporting me. If you want to join the Discord, there is a sale going on the Patreon right now. I think everything is half off. All the tiers are half off for the month. So if you want to join to get in on the Discord rather, again, everything's like half off. So I would take advantage of that now, so you can get in the Discord where we can yap and yap and yap and yap and yap. Thank you so much who have supported me thus far. If you want to join the Patreon, of course, you get your name shouted out at the end of every video. You get early access to videos. You get any extras that I decide to make on any videos that I make. That will go there as well. Like I'll probably make an extra videos for this video of me reading more Deltarune theories and like talking about it just like off the cuff. Sometime later this month is when I'm going to start the like book club. So I want to get in. If you want to get in on that, you want to get on in on that now. So you have choices and stuff like that. You also can decide what my next video is going to be about, etc, etc, etc. Early access to forums. Y'all already know the deal. Stickers. Speaking of, if the stickers are ready, I'm gonna shout it out here. If you join my Patreon, you get a discount code on the stickers. I have stickers. So yeah, of course, let me know about your Deltarune theories down in the comments below. Of course, you can always join my Patreon if you want to talk on Discord about it. And hey, I will see you in the next video. Love and peace.